Welcome back to Laugh Through It All. I'm your host, Tracy. Join me as I talk to Deb Ellinger, founder and executive director of Elli's House. We'll talk about the inspiring work of Elli's House, which is a transformative outreach program and shelter for women facing homelessness, addiction, and sex trafficking in Detroit. Okay, so can you tell us how you founded Elli's House and what inspired you to start an organization like this?
Yeah, so I come from a law enforcement background. I worked in law enforcement for several years, and then worked a few sex crime cases during that time, and just kind of fell in love with empowering and helping women. And then I left my job to stay at home and raise kids and have babies, and found myself working for a nonprofit in the city. And what I was learning was that girls were running away at a very alarming rate. Lack of communication in homes, just lots of um, dysfunction going on. And then while they were running away, they were getting approached to work in the sex industry, I guess, if you will. So, clubs, strip clubs, girls were being asked to work as prostitutes as young as 15. And so I was learning how this was it was actually not alarming to the people who lived in the city. It was more alarming to me who was coming, I'm a visitor to the city. I grew up in the city, but I live in the suburbs. So it was alarming to me. And so I started doing some research, started kind of digging into what trafficking looked like, started to educate myself, and found myself in this area of like Seven and Gratiot, just kind of looking. We were looking for missing girls, actually. So my husband and I would go out in our own car, and we had missing girl flyers with girls specifically, right, who were missing. We would go into station party stores, the tattoo parlors, and we just kind of started creating these people. Sometimes we would get like a tip, someone would say, I think I saw her. And if that was enough, we would call that in and go, hey, we just talked to somebody that they think they saw this girl. And we'd give them that number. And that was attached to her missing girl flyer. So we started doing that. And then I ran into an off duty police officer who was working security at a hotel. And I was like, hey, I'm looking for girls who are being trafficked, are in some type of forced prostitution, that type of thing. And he led us to Harper and Connor, Seven and Chalmers. And that's kind of how Ellie's House started.
Now, you said that he was an off-duty cop?
Yeah, he was working security, just like a side job kind of thing. And I was like, I'm very specific in what I'm looking at. And
Sure.
he was like, these two areas are very specific for that area. And as we've been doing it, so my husband and I started in 2016. We became a nonprofit in 2017. And since then, we've had people come from all over, like South Dakota, all over the country, specifically to this area where we do outreach because it's known for drugs, trafficking, and prostitution.
Now, I read on your website that Michigan is the second largest for
Yeah,
trafficking.
so we would say that we're somewhere in the top five right now.
Okay.
Um, mostly because you can get in and out of our state really quick and get into another country, right? Whether you go through Port Huron or you go through Canada. So we are a big thorough way to get in and out of the country very quickly. We also border another state, which you can get in and out of relatively quickly. And I also think a lot of it contributes to poverty as well and lack of resources.
So your facility, is it actual like home where people live there, come there until they can get back on their feet?
Yeah, so we have two homes where we're small, we're intentionally small. So we have two homes that are actually like houses, and people in the community, they consider them like rental houses. So they don't know, they're like safe houses.
Okay.
And we have two women at each, so that's the most we can have. And then our program is a 2-year rent-free program. So you can stay with us for up to 2 years. Sometimes we have women who need to stay longer because finding a house sometimes is hard, finding sustainable housing. especially right now, has been challenging. And so you can stay a little bit longer if you need to. You can go faster if you are able to. But during the time, we're going to help you with like budgeting, vocational opportunities, educational resources. So if you want to go to, we just had a resident who went to Dorsey Business School. Now she's working as a biller in a medical office. So we will kind of help you navigate those processes. We're big on therapy, mental health, so we want you to work through all of your childhood or adult trauma that you've experienced, and then the end goal is that you have a job that can provide for housing for you, and then we help you find sustainable long-term housing.
Is there an age range that you work with? Like, do you just work
Yeah,
with children? Do you work or no?
18 and over is what
Okay.
we do. Yeah, so and we've seen everything from 18 to 70s. Like we've seen a very wide range. Um, you know, it's just has no bias. Trafficking has no bias.
And so is trafficking, because you also work with like homeless in
Hmm.
general and people who are suffering with addictions, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So what we've learned is that if you are struggling with homelessness, you probably at some point have a very high percentage of exchanging sex against your will for something for survival, whether
Okay.
that be food, whether that be literally a small space in a drug house with a mattress, those types of things. Um, Most people who do not have secure housing are struggling with substance use and struggling with exchanging sex for something to provide for their needs.
My gosh, it's such a scary thing to think about, especially when people don't have, they think that they don't have any other way.
Right, right, and that is kind of the mentality. We hear that a lot. We hear, "Oh, I made a poor choice. I met this guy, and now I'm kind of stuck here."
Right.
We hear a lot with substance use. Substance use is very, very challenging to stop doing.
Mhm.
It's challenging because it's hard. It's hard on your body. It's hard on you mentally, um, but it's also very hard to get into a good program. And so I think that's very scary to people is to go from a life that, although is not safe, but they know it, they're
Right.
familiar with it, right? Um, to
And they're
go
in
to
control.
unknown.
At that point, they feel like they're in control. They're making the
Yeah,
decisions.
yeah, and that's the key word right there. They feel like they're in control, right? They feel
Right.
like, well, I don't have any rules out here. There's rules out there. There's a hierarchy. There's always somebody who's going to have
Sure.
control over you. Wherever you're at, you have to report to somebody. And it's just like that on the street, but it does give you the illusion that you get to make all your decisions, but
Right.
that's not true.
So what would you say is the mission of Ellie's house?
I would say is to end human trafficking in the city of Detroit. Um, I would love to see like in our specific area, I would love to see less women on the street and better housing for people in the city. I've watched that area. I grew up in this area, and to see like where it was to where it is now, um, like I just think we as a community can do better.
And is it, I mean, the police enforcement in that area in general, how does that work? I mean, I know you said you were a cop, but are there a section of the police department that monitors that and looks into that? How does that work as far as the police department go?
So we have a really great relationship with what is the ninth precinct, which is where we're at. We're in the ninth precinct. I think a couple things happen. I think you get a group of guys or officers, men or women, who have a passion for working with this demographic, and so when they interact, that comes out, right? Their passion is out. Their actual deep desire to help. To me, helping is not writing a ticket for prostitution. That's just creating this cycle of that never ends. So I think there's those groups of people. I think there's other groups of people that have the of the opinion that this is just the way the area is,
Mm.
and we're not going to change it. And then I think there's another group of people who would love to just go in and arrest everyone and throw them in jail forever. So,
Right.
and I know that that department is super overworked and underpaid. There's
Sure,
not
sure.
enough of them for the amount of people that are out there. I was talking to a girl the other day and she was like, I feel like the police have been much nicer to us, which really made me happy. And I was like, that's really cool to hear. So I think they do the best that they can. When we first started out there, the first few years we were out there, there was a lot of undercover operations going on, and so they would arrest the men buying the sex, which actually I think is where the biggest problem is. Like that, we need to like end the demand. And so for a while, they weren't arresting them. I take that back. They were writing them tickets. So they would write tickets for them, but they would tow their cars, and that's where the bit like that's where you get hit. And
Okay.
so towing in Detroit, the tow company determines what the amount is, and it can be anything that they decide, and it's usually a pretty hefty bill. So for a while, that was kind of going on, and it appeared that it was deterring people. But then COVID came, and then of course they weren't doing it during COVID, and then I think it just never gained any more traction after that.
So there really isn't in the police department, there's not like say a department that reaches out. I guess that wouldn't be reaches out to help them, but it's showing a little more, being a little bit lighter when it comes to arresting those women.
Yeah, so we have like the community policing guys. So there's like a special community policing department
Okay.
that works with like the area businesses, the area nonprofits. I see them doing a really good job at trying to provide help. They'll call me frequently and just be like, hey, I'm talking with this woman right now. Can you help me find a place for her? Another thing recently that they've done that we've been able to be a part of is their vice unit has been having resource fairs. So they set up areas in the city. Specifically, they've done it in the ninth precinct twice now, I think, two or three times, and we've been a part of it once. But it's an opportunity for men and women to come and get resources on drug treatment programs, resources on housing, um, harm reduction. So there's condoms, there's HIV testing, those types of things. And they're going to be doing another one again. And so we're going to help kind of grow that a little bit, which I think is a good step to bridging the gap between the demographic of women we serve and men and the police department.
Yeah, interesting that you just said men because when I think of it, I don't know why men just don't come to mind as playing in the opposite role. So,
Hmm.
y- do men get trafficked? Is my
They do.
I so naive to think they don't?
Yeah, no, they do. A couple things that makes it a little bit harder. It doesn't happen as often.
Okay.
Um, That's one thing. The other thing is men don't talk about it as often.
Sure.
It's very embarrassing. It's very shame based, and it's like that for women, but it's a different level of shame for a man.
I can
Um,
see that.
and so we don't know. We don't have those types of experiences as often because it's not something a man would even really share.
Right.
Hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that kind of, sometimes sometimes just these things come to your mind. You're like, well, wait a minute, God, I didn't even think about that. Not that
Yeah,
there should be any difference because there's not. But
right. And there's a also very high transgender population too right now.
oh, okay, yes,
Hmm.
yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So wait, so do you go and approach people or do you let them come to you? Or like you said, someone may call you and say, I've been talking to somebody. Is it all pretty much people come to you?
So it's a little bit of all of that. In addition to our residential program, we have an outreach team that goes out 4 days a week. And
Oh,
so we go out and talk to men and women who are in um, abandoned houses or looking to exchange sex for money. Some of those people are giving it to a pimp. Some of them are giving it to a drug dealer. Some of them are keeping it or giving it to supply a need of food or shelter or their drug. But we go and talk to people, and hand out food, hygiene, socks, um, blankets in the wintertime, hats, gloves, scarves, flip flops in the summertime, clothes. So we'll package up clothing bags, and then just kind of meet people where they're at with no expectation, just loving them. And then hopefully at some point when they're ready, we can help them navigate a treatment program or other programs whenever that time comes. And if it doesn't, it's okay too.
Now, do shelters, like for homeless shelters, do they, I guess, frown upon, when, I don't know if that's the right word, but
Mhm.
do people who, maybe are addicted to drugs or who work the streets, are they usually not allowed into a homeless shelter?
No, I think there's actually a huge need for it, and there's probably a huge amount of people utilizing those shelters. I
Okay.
think one thing we could do better in shelters is educating everybody what trafficking looks like. I was just reading a story about a woman who was allegedly being trafficked in a shelter, and so she had reported it, and it's being investigated. So I don't know if it's exactly what's going on, but I just think we need to educate people as they're coming in and out of the shelters about what trafficking looks like. I think one that takes a stance that you're not going to tolerate it there, so you're aware of it, you know it's going on, you know it can happen. But it also does provide awareness to people, and we all need awareness, no matter where you are.
I agree. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because it is not talked about
Mhm.
enough. And I mean, I wish it was. So if you take trafficking, it kind of explain, because I'm sure there's more than just one little definition of what trafficking actually means. So
Yeah.
if you could take us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so trafficking usually well, has to involve one of three components: a force, a fraud, or a coercion.
Okay.
So any of those things involved with, so force or like exchange or telling somebody they're going to have a job. This is like the number one way people in Michigan. So you meet someone online, they tell you all the things you want to hear. They're going to have a house for you. They're going to have a job for you. They're going to have they're going to help you go to school. They're going to do all these things for you. They get you to come to where their life, where they're at, and it's none of those things. So like everyone we talked to knew or had some type of relationship with their trafficker. It doesn't have to be what like a trusting, what we would say years and years of a committed relationship. It could be a very short term relationship with someone that met online for a week, and now that's actually happened. A woman met this guy online. She was losing her house. She had lost her job, and after 7 or 8 days, he said, I have a house for you. I actually have a job for you. He came and picked her up. She moved all her belongings into a abandoned house with no running water and other women, and her job was to exchange sex and give him the money. So those are very common ways that it happens. And then force, it can happen by a forceful situation. It doesn't typically happen that way in Michigan. So I get asked a lot of times when I do trainings for nurses and social workers, but like, are people getting abducted from the streets or from the malls and being used for trafficking? That can happen, but that is not typically the way that it's happening in Michigan. And I think we need to focus on how it's really happening.
Yeah, because I promise you, I think that's what a lot of people think.
They
Because
do. Yeah,
that's just what TV and movies do to you, is
sure.
you are living here and they are taking you, moving you completely away from everything you know, and there's, then you can't get home. You know what I mean? That's the
Right.
vision that I even had.
Yeah. So yeah. And I think the other misconception along those same lines is like that you actually have to cross boundaries or borders or state lines or country like that. No, none of that is true. It is usually through some type of false promise that's been made between two people that typically have some type of connection with one another, whether that be a few days or many,
Sure.
many years. Um, but that's typically how it's happening.
Yeah, not abducted off the streets and then
Correct.
okay. And then what about what about for see, because I think about this too for kids. So the
Mm,
under 18 crowd. I mean, I know you don't work with under 18, but
mhm.
what are some of the dangers for little ones for younger than 18 and how are they getting in this situation?
So the same way, I think some of the biggest dangers for them are actually the same for adults. They're just more vulnerable at a younger age, right? Their brain's not developed.
Hmm.
So if they have a vulnerability, such as a falling out at home, let's say, could be a big vulnerability. Parents getting divorced could be a vulnerability. And communication with your family, whoever your caregiver, breaks down, and now you're online all the time. Like those are things that we need to be talking about with the young kids that we care about. I tell parents and guardians and grandparents all the time, if you want to know what your kid's doing online, download all the apps that they have, download all the games that they have, and interact with them. Know who, like, can you talk to someone when you're playing a game? Can some random person show up on my kid's screen and now we can have a dialogue together? Because that's how trafficking is happening. And having those conversations. And I think the other thing is, I tell people who have younger kids in their life that they're caring for, have another adult that you trust and you care about speak into their life. Maybe there is a situation going on with a young child, but they're too nervous to come to mom and dad right away. Like that's going to happen. I have 4 kids. They're all young adults now. It has happened.
Sure.
And have a person that they can feel comfortable with, that they trust, that you trust, that is going to give them good insight, and then let them see if they'll bring it to you. But don't shut the door on relationships with good people in your child's life, and be very aware of who they are connecting with, who they're on their phones with, and who they're with online, because everything's online.
Mm. It's so incredible. That online is so incredibly scary.
It is.
It really is. So take me like a day in the life at Ellie's house. What is like a day-to-day operation type thing going
Yeah. So I can tell. So today we had a meeting with a resident. So I have a caseworker, a therapist, and like a house mom and an intern who are all on staff. And so Mondays, they usually do regular house meetings. And then sometimes on a Monday or Friday, I'll jump in and kind of catch up with residents. And so today, I had a meeting with a resident just to check in with how things are going. Are you meeting your goals? What's your next big goal that you're working towards? How can we help you accomplish that goal? Are you meeting with your therapist? Are you keeping all your doctor's appointments? Those types of things. And then after that, we went on outreach. So then we were on the street for a few hours, and we kind of have a route that we take, and we go to all the houses. There's about, I don't know, maybe anywhere between 10 and 12 houses we go to.
on?
And then if we see women or men walking on the street, we'll stop and ask them if they're hungry or want some food. Today we were at one house for quite a while. We have a girl who's really struggling right now. Um, is very looks very ill, very thin, and is just battling going to treatment. And so we sat and talked with her for quite a while. Then we sat and talked with another friend who just had a seizure and does not look well and is not doing well. So we sat and talked with her for a while too. Um, and now I'm here.
So out there's that many outreach houses in that area.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we hand out, each time we go out, we hand out on an average of 50 to 60 lunches and hygiene kits. And some of those are doubled up. Sometimes, people are getting two sometimes if they need it, especially on a Friday before the weekend.
Uh-huh.
Um, but we go through on an average of 50 to 60 each time we go out.
And your all of these outreach houses, are they in what type of area? I mean, are they the type of areas where they're going to be more surrounding that, or is it a little bit out so they can get away from that type of atmosphere?
Yeah, so the houses, the residential houses where they live or were in our program, they're in
Yeah.
a neighborhood, they're in a community.
Okay. Oh, okay. So
Mhm.
they're not,
Yeah.
worrying about going outside, and as soon as they step outside, it's going to be right there in their faces.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we really want people to be able to adapt into their community
Sure.
living, right? Like there's so much value and power in a strong community. Um, and although they thought their community was strong where they came from, they learn when they're in a healthy community and a healthy environment that that wasn't the case. And so we really want to help them adapt to being a strong part of their community, contributing to that community, taking care of the house that they do live in, and then seeing that happen around them as well.
And the community, the area that you're in, the neighbors and everything are very welcoming, and
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yep. Yeah. Our neighbors on one so our the street the houses are two streets away or one street away from each other. We've been in the one house we've been there longer, and that street itself is very close knit.
Yeah.
So they have block parties, or at the beginning of the school year, we contribute to giving book bags to the kids in the neighborhood. The other street is a little bit more rental houses and a little bit more transient. So we're working on building that community, but we have really great neighbors across the street and they have been wonderful to us.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you think is your biggest challenges that you face with just even running the shelter? Well, you wouldn't be considered a shelter now.
No, I think I refer to it more as like a transitional housing.
Okay, okay. So
hmm
what do you think is the biggest challenge?
I mean, I think it always comes back to money. Like we could do more if we had more money. Finances. We don't have any grants, so we are privately funded through various churches and people from those churches and organizations and companies that support us. Um, but I think it comes down to if we if we had more money, we could do more, to
Sure.
be honest. Yeah.
And so you take donations, and you said
hmm
businesses sometimes. Okay. And then
Yeah, so
we'll link something on the page too. So if people want to donate, they most
great.
certainly can do that for you. Uh,
Yeah, that would be great.
so what about some success stories?
Yeah. So I do have what I know everybody loves to hear, success stories. Um, Trained my brain to do now and believe is that anyone we interact with is a success. So if you walk through our door at a shelter and you're there for 3 or 4 days, one day, let's say, you had one day where you were safe and not on the street, and that's a success to me.
Love it.
Um, I think any woman or man on the street willing to share their story with us is a privilege and a win. You're sharing some really hard stuff. I've had women tell me they've never shared some of the stuff that they've shared with anybody before. And so I think that's a success to me. When you start talking about your trauma, you start addressing it, and healing can happen. So I think that's a privilege. But we've had 7 women graduate our program. And so that's been really cool. And I love that we have relationships with most of the women, not all of them, but even women that left our program prematurely will still reach out periodically and just check in. And several of the women that have graduated our program, we have a really strong connection with.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Especially when even the people, if they leave early and they come back and touch base with you, it's because they trust you. And
Yeah.
that alone is huge.
Yeah, and I think like we really try to instill that like even if you leave our program, even if we're on the street and we take you to a treatment program and you're back out on the street in a few days, we're gonna love you. We're gonna meet you where you're at, right? Like we'll try again another time.
Hmm.
It's just not your time.
So do you have like people who come and go? That's
Yeah,
a common thing.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
very common. Yeah. It's very common to try a program, not finish it, come back and you just you just do it and keep trying until you really are ready. And
Sure.
some people get to that point where they're really ready and some never do. But we're committed to just meeting you where you're at, regardless of that.
Yeah, it's got to be because it's such a different lifestyle,
It
so
is.
for them
Yeah.
to try to make that change when they could easily go back to what they know and was, I mean, not easy as in the big picture, but it was
Hmm.
an easy thing for them to go right back into.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them, that's all they've known since they were kids,
Right,
a lot of them, right?
right.
Yeah.
How do you um ensure safety in your houses?
Yeah, so I mean, of course, we have an alarm system, we have a camera system, and the houses are not to be disclosed to anybody.
Okay,
So people can't come and go, they can't have visitors. If we do have people who work for us, or sometimes we'll have work groups come out to help us with landscaping or painting, or if we need things done at the house, they have to sign a waiver indicating they won't share the location of the houses. And so far, that's worked. We haven't had any problems.
so do you work out of one of those houses or do you work out of an office?
So we work out of that house. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Hmm. Yep. So, and there's typically someone there, um, Monday through Friday. There's usually a staff person there.
All 24 hours?
No, not 24 hours, just during
Okay.
business hours. Yep.
So the people who stay there are, it's just like they're home, they can come and go?
Depending on where they are in the program. So
Okay,
there's like stages of the program. So
okay,
when depending on where you are in the program, you might have a 30-day restriction, which would mean you can just come to and from meetings, to and from doctor's appointments, things like that. And then we gradually work your way up.
okay. But they are just trusted in you decide to
Hmm.
leave, that's on you.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right. That still gives them a little bit of control of their own, they're
Yeah,
still feeling a sense of control, even though
for
they're,
sure.
they're at the hands of someone to help them.
For sure, and I don't I wanna be able to give them tools to be able to manage their life, right,
Hmm.
independently, um, and if they're not ready for that, I want them to have the freedom to leave.
Sure. So how does Ellie's House collaborate with other people in the community? What types of people, what types of organizations do you look for when you're looking for, some collaboration?
Yeah, so we've collaborated with, there's a group of nurses that go out and do street outreach, and so they provide all the medical stuff in addition to blankets and flashlights and those types of things. And so we've collaborated with them quite a bit, actually. I would love to collaborate more with a needle exchange program. We used to work with a guy who would exchange for clean needles
Oh,
um, years ago, and then kind of lost track of them, actually. I'm not sure what happened, but we I love to work with people like that. I love to work with people who are doing free STD testing, HIV testing, where it's accessible. They can get there and do it, and those types of collaborations are wonderful.
and then what about, do you look for volunteers to help
Mhm.
what types of things do you look for in from your average Joe, like, from like myself,
Yeah.
anybody else
Yes.
listening?
We're always looking for volunteers to help with outreach, to help package things for outreach. So packaging up like lunches, snack bags, hygiene kits. We're usually looking for someone to help organize our supplies at least once or twice a year. That's a big one. Um, and then we have a dream of opening up a drop-in center,
Hmm.
which would be a house in our outreach area for women to come and get a hot meal, wash their clothes. We would have like a clothing closet, um, wound care. So I would be looking for social workers for that and nurses for that as well.
And then what about donations? Can people donate items to you?
Yeah, so on our website, there's an
Okay.
Amazon wish list. Those are the
Oh,
biggest items we need.
oh my. Okay.
Yeah,
I
and they get shipped
do
right
that.
to my house. Yeah, they get shipped right to my house, and I try to update them every week, every couple weeks, typically, depending on what our needs are. But you can go right on there, and we'll throw it out on social media quite frequently to let people know what our biggest needs are and that they can purchase. And let me tell you, people show up for that.
I
I mean,
bet.
it is incredible how generous people will be. I will come home and there's just boxes piled up on my porch of everything we needed for the next day.
And see, that's things that that I can even put on my social media page. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
just real quick, I mean, I know what your website is, but I mean, I can look it up. But what is your actual website that people?
Yep, it's www.ellieshouse313.com.
Okay, I love that. And
Yeah, it's been so helpful.
you have social media pages also that people can
Yep,
follow you?
yep, an Instagram and a Facebook page.
Okay. Well, I will get on following you on those. I'll probably follow you on my personal and on my
Sure.
and the podcast one. So, okay,
Okay.
that's great. I love that because that
Yeah,
I can do my part in spreading that information out absolutely for sure.
yeah, and it's so helpful. Thank you.
Oh, I can imagine because even if there's one thing that someone can afford to buy, you know what I mean? It is
Right,
huge.
right.
What what would you say are some like misconceptions that people often have about, homelessness or addiction or the sex trafficking? What are some things you think people have a
Mhm.
misconception about?
I think one misconception is that everybody came from poverty and everybody's from poor families or from Detroit, and that's not true at all.
Yeah.
Everybody has a different story. They come from different backgrounds, everything from the suburbs to where the stereotype is you probably have very few problems. That's also not true. Um, we've had girls come from very wealthy families. We've had foster care. We've had everything in between. And so I think um, the misconception is, oh, if our family, and I'm using air quotes, has it all together, then this wouldn't happen. That is a huge lie.
And just the manipulation and how easily some of these people can be manipulated into this lifestyle is astonishing to me. I mean, I can't even imagine. But,
Yeah, it is amazing to me as well.
I mean, as I'm a special education teacher, but even, seeing somehow vulnerable, especially a special needs kid, I mean,
Yeah.
kids in general, but there have been students along the way that I thought that I was so worried about them and how they were going to
Mm,
navigate through life because they would have been easily manipulated. And it just kills me to think of
yeah.
how that happens.
Yep. It just takes one vulnerability, and it doesn't have to be like huge on the vulnerability
No,
scale. It can be this, like what some people might consider a small vulnerability. It's still a
sure.
vulnerability, and people will hone in on it
And completely change your life.
completely. Yep.
So you said if you're looking at short-term and long-term goals for Ellie's house, one would be to have that drop-in house, right?
Yeah.
And what else are you looking forward to starting?
Um, I think I would like to grow our outreach area a little bit more. So we've expanded a little bit. We have a survivor who works for us, and they expanded to her and her husband expanded our outreach area to Six and John R, which is where they used to be
Okay.
when she was in struggling with substance use and homelessness. And so they're out there feeding people that they used to hang out with, which is really powerful. So I think I would like to continue to kind of grow our outreach areas. And then if we get this drop-in center, see how that goes, tweak it and make it better, and perhaps grow that.
But still stay within the city of Detroit, correct?
For sure. Yeah. I just have a passion for the city, and
Sure.
that's probably not changing anytime soon. So yeah,
No.
I would love to see just more community, more grocery stores. Like there's all these things that I think contribute to the breakdown of the neighborhood, the breakdown of the community, lack of housing, lack of proper food sources. All of those things have contributed. And I would love to see that built back up, one
Mm.
little section of the community at a time.
What do you think has been the most reward? I mean, I can imagine the first time you opened and the first person
Mhm,
you were able to bring in to your place and
mhm.
know that it's what you are dreaming of doing and your passion. What else, what would you say would be the most rewarding thing so far?
Mm, gosh,
I'm
I
sure
would,
quite a few.
gosh, yeah, there's so many.
Yeah.
The first person that ever came into our program was from
Yeah.
Street Outreach, and she stayed for 6 weeks, which was we were so happy about that. And we
Hmm.
still talk to her on the street, but man, that the relationship we have with her specifically has been like such a blessing to me. Like we know her family, we like that is such a big accomplishment.
Sure.
To actually have contact with somebody's family and know all the little different things about her and about her family and about her kids is like a privilege to for us, I guess. We had one resident go to the Navy, which was really cool to watch her right now.
Oh,
Watching her kind of do her life in the Navy, which has been was a big dream of her and of hers, and seemed almost impossible. She had been turned down so many times, and she was not old, she's in her 30s, but older for getting into the Navy. And she never gave up, and she persevered and she got in, and she's kind of like living her best life right now. So it's been kind of rewarding to watch that.
that would be very rewarding because
Yeah.
think that she was in a place of probably hopelessness at that time and then
Hmm.
to still be able to go on. I see that, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I just love because it's never too late. And that's
No.
always my message of trying to empower women and people in general, but that it's never too late to change your path.
That's so true. I love that so much. That's so true.
Yes, that is amazing. I love that story.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you give someone who would like to get involved?
Yeah, I would say, well, you can call or text me or email me, but I would say come into it with a clear mind and the willingness to learn. So when we do outreach training, I tell people for the first time, like, be a student. I'm still a student um, of the people we serve. I don't have it all figured out. I'm learning something new every day, and just to be open to that and open to not making judgments or assumptions about people, um, and just to be willing to hear some hard stuff.
Yeah, the judgment, that's a big one is
Hmm.
you've got to put that aside because
Yeah, and we all do it. We all have we all have
sure, for
judgments,
sure.
and so we just really do have to keep it under control when we're loving the people that we love.
Yeah, I mean because nobody really asks for that kind of life.
Mm,
It just, one thing or another brings them to that place and that time in their life. So,
yeah,
that's tough. You have a tough job.
it is tough. Yeah, it is tough.
You know,
But I
um
do love it. But I do love what we do. But yeah, and so self-care is really important to me, like having downtime, having time with your family, having time to do the things you like to do, and having boundaries is really important in this work.
Yeah, and being able to, and I'm sure you don't shut it off, but you've got to be able to step back and clear your mind of it. So, you know what I mean? Because that kind of work would eat you up.
It would. And then you're no good to anybody.
Sure, sure.
So yeah.
And it was your husband, you said your husband does it with you all, right? Also?
He used to, and he'll go now every now and then, but now
Okay,
we have bigger teams now.
sure.
But yeah, he's very supportive, and he'll go out whenever I'm short a person. He'll always jump in and go with us.
Is he also a police officer or no?
No,
No.
mm-mm.
So just you got all mixed up in this, huh?
I did, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the job you do.
Oh,
So
well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking with you.
thank you for joining me. As always, do better, expect better, and be better. And remember to laugh through it all. Don't forget to check out my Shopify page where you can pick up some do better, expect better, be better, and some laugh through it all merchandise. Link is in the description.